To the untrained eye, it looks like I am standing next to the new BMW X1. And I am. The only difference though is that this vehicle in particular doesn't have a traditional engine where it's supposed to be. Instead, we have got a 64.7 kilowatt hour battery because this is the full electric BMW iX1. Now, we recently drove the iX3 and we love this car's older sibling. So today we want to find out if this new BMW iX1 is all that and a bag of chips. To differentiate itself between a normal X1 and an iX1, this vehicle has various blue accents in strategic places. For instance, the grille, the bumper, and the badge are all in blue to show you that this car is very green. On the inside, it is very much standard new BMW X1 in here, barring the new iDrive 8 infotainment system, which uses this huge curved screen which integrates the digital instrument cluster and the infotainment system, and we like that a lot. Besides that, it's small design changes here and there. For instance, we've got the small gear knob and we've got a slightly raised foot section, which makes a lot of sense because the battery sits underneath the car. I personally feel that this iX1 came in at the right time for the BMW stable as a whole, because before this, the smallest electric vehicle you could get from the stable was a Mini Cooper SE, and that is a two-door hatchback. Going bigger from that, you'd have to get an iX3, but if you don't need the space of an iX3, that car could be too big. And that is where the iX1 comes in. It's big enough for you to still have a small family and enjoy the practical elements of an SUV, but it's not small enough for it to be unusable, similar to what a Mini Cooper SE can be for people who have more needs from a space perspective. In the case of the BMW iX1, this vehicle is not meant to be a performance SUV, yet it still produces 230 kilowatts of power and just under 500 Newton meters of torque, which is still quite a lot. And that basically means that you can go from 0 to 100 in 5.6 seconds in a baby electric SUV. This car will give you a range of up to 440 kilometers, which is very good. When discussing charging your electric car and how you can plan your route, the analogy of a cell phone is used quite a bit. But I think that analogy is getting a bit old now because, as we know, every day you charge your cell phone. But in an electric car such as this, you don't need to charge it daily. So gone are the days where you'd have to plug this thing overnight in your house and you charge it for 8 hours. Yes, you can still do that, but ultimately for me, it makes more sense to take one day in a week and go to your favorite coffee spot where you know there's a DC charger and you can plug this thing in and within an hour, you've got a full charge. Unlike the BMW iX3, the iX1, in my opinion, takes a little bit more time to get used to how the vehicle reacts. When I first jumped into the iX1, I was quite shocked at how harsh the regenerative braking was. But then I started to toggle in the menu and I can see that you can set how harsh you want the regen to be. So if you set it in its more intermediate setting, it is a bit more smoother in terms of how that pulling sensation gets you each time you lift off the throttle. Another factor one needs to get used to in an electric car is the weight of the vehicle. Because the batteries are quite heavy, it changes the way the vehicle feels driving day to day, but especially around corners. I've found that I've needed to recalibrate how I take corners in this iX1. Normally, you can take a corner quite confidently, especially in a vehicle that has got the M Sport treatment. But in this car, because the batteries are so heavy, each time you take a corner at speed, you do feel a decent amount of body roll. But the moment you slow down the speeds to accommodate the weight of the batteries, the vehicle feels quite dynamic and you can almost use the weight of the car to your advantage, and as a whole, you end up getting quite a dynamic experience from this iX1. One thing I've noticed when I drive an electric car is that I'm quite hyper aware of my surroundings. And that is because the cabin in a vehicle such as this is very quiet. So much so, it tends to play with your mind and you end up feeling like this iX1 is actually quite hard in terms of its ride quality. But when I actually start to think about it, the ride quality is actually pretty decent. So much so, you could easily take this for a long weekend away, provided there are charging stations on your route.